Professor. I appreciate you sharing this classroom with me. It's really an honor to be here. I always wanted to attend Penn. That was one of my dream schools. I say one because I ended up going to Howard University. I'm not sure if y'all familiar with that. It's in Washington, D.C. But before I even made it to Howard University or had dreams of going to Penn, I attended school here in Philadelphia, public school, of course. I went to a school called Quamiir. That was the first school I ever went to. It's in Roxborough. Not sure if you're familiar with that area. Kind of a cool area now. If you go down there and like to hang out, like Main Street, they have the movies. They got like a bunch of taverns and stuff. But I went to a school in Roxborough called Quamiir because I lived in Roxborough, Manioc. And during that time, my mom was raising me. I only highlight that because eventually my mom lost custody of me, which is actually the reason why I got kicked out of Quamiir. So when I was in 6th grade, that was my final year at Quamiir. They told me that if I get in any more trouble, being as though I was such a trouble student, I guess that's what they labeled me as, that I would have to leave. And actually, by the time I was in 6th grade, my mother, she had lost custody of me and my siblings. So I have 2 siblings on my mom's side. 3 siblings. One actually passed away, which is the reason why my mom lost custody. His name was Quamiir. My little brother, he was 6 months. And it's kind of like really personal when I share this information, so bear with me. But my mom, she was addicted to drugs. When I was around like 8 years old, I found out that when she came home from the hospital after giving birth to one of my siblings, that she had to start taking Percocets because of like a hole was in her stomach. And the doctors and nurses used to come home to patch it for her. But you could start seeing like the downfall of my mom. Like she wasn't getting up, taking us to school on time anymore. She wasn't, just being that parent that she used to be, like helping out with our projects, our homework. And I just recently had a chance to thank her because I remember like being in 1st or 2nd grade where she gave me like that real strong foundation to not only like learn how to read and write, but to just have a care for education. Like I really cared about being one of the students who could stand up and present a project to the rest of the class and like show off. It really was my mom's work, but it was like, look what I did. And the teacher was like really, like blown away from it. So by the time I was in 6th grade, this had been like 3 years after my little brother had died. And everyone was like trying to provide services for us. We had therapy, we had like in-house, like one-on-one services. And one particular service that I didn't receive, it was called like the Best Team. And it just sounded cool, right? Best Team. They had a program where they would send like a student, someone like it was a male who would come into the classroom to work one-on-one with students. And one of the particular workers used to play and1 basketball. Anybody familiar with that? And1 basketball? That was like my favorite thing growing up. So he used to also drive in like a Benz, coming to school every day. And like all the girls in my class used to be like, oh, look at Mr. Washington, right? So if you was hanging with Mr. Washington, you was like a cool kid. And I knew at that time, like my dad was in prison. He's still in prison right now. He has a life sentence. So I had no like real hopes or plans on, ever meeting my true hero, right? Which would be my dad. So I was looking for a hero. I was looking for somebody to give me that one-on-one attention. And I think that's the role that you guys kind of serve right now. Like you have the opportunity to give the attention to a lot of students as tutors. I believe that's what y'all serve as, tutors. And you'll, believe it or not, you'll make a huge difference in a child's life just by listening to them. And that's what Mr. Washington did. He listened to me. And he gave me that attention that I was craving so badly after my mom lost custody. After I really like just realized that my dad was never probably gonna come home again, right? And I started acting out though, because the only way I can get his attention was by acting out. I couldn't be a A student and get his attention. I couldn't be on honor roll and pass, like have the highest scores on the PSSA if I wanted his attention. That makes sense? So it kind of made me realize, like, I wish it was the opposite, right? Like, I wish that it was more about me doing the right thing in order to get the attention, but I realized it wasn't, right? So I ended up getting kicked out in 6th grade, got transferred to my neighborhood middle school, which was where my grandmother lived, and my grandma lived in the hood, right? I don't know if it's a big difference between Roxborough's hood and the hood.
Well, yeah, you got
the fact that we call
hills
it
and grass.
yeah. Makes a difference, I'm telling you. But the school that I had to transfer to was called Ada Lewis, and if you look it up right now, it's not even open anymore. But you can actually ride by there and see that it wasn't like, you know, a care for school. Like, no, a lot of people didn't care too much for it. You had a lot of families that went there and had pride, but it's shut down. Like, you see like all the windows busted out, and it's just sitting there like a vacant building. When I was there though, it was the last year that it was open in 7th grade. I remember the whole entire 7th grade got suspended. I'll repeat, like the whole entire 7th grade was suspended because it was this big riot and fight after school. Now, I wasn't even there to find out about like the suspension because I was already suspended for fighting, right? So I come back the next day to go to school and they turned me around like, you can't come in because all they had to ask me was I in 7th grade? I was like, yes. And they was like, well, you can't come in today because the whole 7th grade is suspended. I'm looking at them like, wait, what did I do? Like, I'm supposed to be coming back today. Like, I don't feel like I don't deserve that punishment. But they couldn't figure out who was to blame for the riot, so of course they had to shut it down. And the school ended up shutting down that year. But one thing that happened to me that year, the light bulb kinda went off, you know, like that Thomas Edison thing where he kinda figured out how to work the light bulb. It was like kinda going off for me, where I knew I cared about my education, right? Because I wasn't learning anything at Ada Lewis. I felt like every day was pretty much a waste of time. And then I had this new opportunity to transfer schools again. And I kept telling my grandma, like, I want to go back to school in Roxborough, right? I want to go back in that neighborhood because I just remember like education being different when I was there. Like every day we learned something, and not just we learned something, but you could tell like the teachers just took their job a little. Like, not to say that the teachers at Ada Lewis didn't care about their job, but they felt defeated based on like the student interactions every day. But it was a little different when you go outside of your neighborhood and go to schools where students want to be there. So I had that opportunity. I ended up going back to a school in Roxborough. It was called William Levering. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's called Amy Northwest, I think now. If you get a chance to go there, it's a cool school. I enjoyed it. That was my last year in middle school. Ended up graduating. Wasn't like a perfect student all of a sudden, but I did kind of get back on track. Like, I wasn't getting suspended all the time. I was taking, you know, my education serious, and I had teachers that were invested in me, and teachers that was telling me like, yo, you're smart. You really got like something going for you. You should really like stick with this. But I also was like cool. You know what I mean? It's like where it should be like cool and smart, because it's like it didn't seem cool to be smart, but you wanted to be cool because, again, cool gets all the attention. And that was one thing that I craved growing up as a kid. So I remember